Hey folks, in this video I'll be attempting a 60 to 70 speedrun which primarily uses Dreamsurges, and my goal for the run is to get a time below 2 hours. If you're unfamiliar with how Dreamsurges work, they're a bit of an RNG nightmare when it comes to speedrunning, as you need to get a very specific combination of buffs to appear in a particular order. This can sometimes take days to actually occur, and before starting this particular run, I had been waiting around for close to 14 hours straight just to make sure I had the right starting sequence. The footage shown here is actually taken around 4 hours before I finally started the run. If I had been lucky, there was a chance here for me to get the buff order that I wanted, but unfortunately it was not meant to be, as the next available options were complete duds. Later on, at 2 in the morning, I finally encountered a buff that was good enough to justify starting the run, so I scrambled to get my character into position and begin the speedrun at the proper time. As you can probably imagine, the timing required to start this run is very precise, so I wasn't able to properly explain everything before the speedrun began. Hopefully this introduction made things a bit more clear, but from here on out I'll be switching back to my usual real-time commentary as the speedrun progresses. Okay, so, hey folks, I obviously am skipping ahead a little bit. I'm gonna have to do like a little recorded preamble ahead of this, but the reality is I just don't have time to really talk too much because we are currently at the last possible moment that this run can be done, at least for another month. Darkmoon Faire goes away in 30 minutes, and I have a separate account open over here. And this character is sitting in the Azure span. I've been monitoring the buffs, and quite literally, like I said, it's the last 30-minute window for another month that I can do this. And, well, you may not know all of the icons just by sight. The thing on the right here that's currently winning is the you get all of the buffs at once thing, which is literally the one that I need. And I have been sitting here for 13 hours straight, I shit you not, trying to get this buff to appear. And it is about to happen at the absolute last possible moment. And yeah, okay, so I need to start this run. Okay, and it did cost me a few precious seconds of time getting this set up, but, you know, what can you do? I also forgot my timer because I did not expect this to happen. Okay, you know, like, normally this is where I would actually cut this out, right? You know, the reality of these types of runs is you gotta work on the fly. I can't change the fact that at the absolute last possible moment I got the RNG I needed. You just gotta roll with it. Okay, timer is set. I have everything I need. I'm probably already taking too long to start this that I really have. Timer starts and we go. Alright, talk to Ebonhorn, blah blah blah. Okay, so I kind of need to do these quests. I guess I'll go do this. Okay, so what is there to say about this run? So, as usual, I've done a bunch of these, but, you know, in case you haven't seen all of my previous 60 to 70 runs, what's the criteria for it, right? So, obviously, there's no way to start a character at level 60, right? There's no clean way to basically start from this point. So, effectively, what I try to do and all of these runs that are kind of jumping off in the middle is get like a clean starting point. And considering all of these runs are going to start by teleporting to Ebonhorn, because you get Ebonhorn's Scale, one of the quest items, which is gone now, but you get that from the Ebonhorn quest, the one that I just did. And that will take you directly to him. So you go over there, you talk to him, you get the introduction quests. No matter what, if you're coming out of leveling in Chromie time from 10 to 60, and then you're going to jump right into Dragonflight. So whether you plan on spamming dungeons, whether you plan on doing quests, that is where you're going to start. So that is where I try to start these runs. You'll notice I'm like a sliver of experience past level 60. It's one of those things where this was a character that I used for like a 10 to 60 run a little while ago, but sometimes the big turn and you do at the end takes you ever so slightly over it. It happens, you know, not really much I can do about that. Reality is, like, a lot of times runs will end exactly like that, where you will end up a tiny little bit over. So if that's why you're wondering, like, what some of the variables in setting up this character for, that's kind of it. But the more important thing is that, you know, as best as I possibly can, and especially compared to all of the other runs that I've done for this category, it tries to simulate all of that stuff as much as it possibly can. And that way you can look at this compared to some of the other runs that I've done for the exact same level bracket and get a good idea on how fast this is relative to all of the other ones. Also, Cracked Rad Next Gem here. This is a speedrunning staple, more useful for low-level runs when you don't have access to flying and stuff, but still a little bit helpful right now while we are getting all this stuff out of the way. Alright. Again, final charge. It has 3 uses, then I would have to restock it, but I'm only going to be using the 3 right here, and I will not be getting another one, because literally right after this, I will have access to dragon riding, so there's absolutely no point. Okay, misclicked my buff off there. Whoops. That's what nerves will do to you. Though that is not actually an important buff. It's like a minor damage increase buff that I literally pick up while I'm at Sage, because it, technically speaking, helps. Would have been worse if I accidentally clicked off the Darkmoon buff. For context, I kind of explained this a little bit. I think we're all good to go. I can take my Delver and Hearthstone. Obviously, I think I've probably tried to explain this a little bit towards the start of the run. Just make sure I didn't, like, fuck up and forget anything. No, I think I got everything. Yeah, I kind of did mention that this was, like, the last possible 30 minutes. In fact, we're already running 2 minutes over right now. You can see that we're 2 minutes past. It's 4 minutes. And yeah, the buff will have been barely active right now in Azure Span, and I'm not even going to worry about all the other stuff. Whenever the buff is not active, that is when we're going to worry about, finishing that introduction quest, and, we'll circle back to that, but right now, that's just, I can't even do time rift, so that's a dead quest for me. We're just going to rush all the way over to Azure Span as quickly as I possibly can. I'm just trying to check the map just to monitor quick. Yeah, we just got a beeline over there. Yeah, so like I said, ideally I would want to be getting to Azure Span exactly on time the moment that buff ticks over. Technically speaking, I'm not as late as it seems, because the reality of the Dreamsurges is they tend to take 1 or 2 minutes past, like, the 30-minute mark that it's supposed to actually switch over. There's, like, some weird delay that goes on, but I still would have liked to get it a little bit closer. But yeah, I'll be completely honest, I had kind of given up. The chances of getting the odds that I actually need to get this, done on time, the perfect sequence of things, and realistically speaking, the sequence that I want is not going to happen. So what I'm hoping for is the all buffs thing we have here into the experience buff, and that is almost certainly not going to happen. Statistically speaking, it's extremely unlikely. But I was just like, at this point, for the last while, I've been thinking to myself, like, look, if I just get the all buff thing at least once, this 24-hour period before the event ends, like, I'll be happy to start a run. And I've literally just been sitting here waiting for it to start. And it's been, I kind of talked about this in some of the previous versions of this run that I've done, where, it's just kind of every 30 minutes you check, and if you don't get the RNG, oh well, and you try again. So this is interesting. I'm not going to sit here and wait for that crate, but it did happen to drop right next to me. I can maybe take a peek over there in like a minute or two, and if nobody has claimed it, I could get free XP. We'll see. But yeah, it's kind of interesting setting up one of these runs, because, I've done WoW speedrunning for quite a while. I'm going to be completely real. This is kind of miserable. And I really hope that, obviously this, like I said, it's more of a speedrunning thing. But just in general, I really hope Blizzard doesn't do something like Dreamsurges again in terms of its randomness, because, while I may be slightly biased in that this is, of course, speedrunning isn't necessarily something everybody does to this degree, at least having talked to a lot of people who level casually, I know that the vast majority of people don't really love the way Dreamsurges work for leveling, because even if you're just trying to casually level for, getting a character up from 60 to 70, it doesn't feel great having to sit here and just wait for this 50% buff to roll around constantly to feel like you're actually leveling efficiently. Where is the Dispelling Wand? Right, it's the one over here. And magic dispelled from the toy boat. Stuff like this. Better to just use flight form. And then I can shift over here. So the idea of like the rotating buffs is kind of nice, but something that I kind of pointed out even in like the beta when this was initially being tested as like a potentially problematic idea is when you have stuff where it's like, oh, you get increased gold from completing world quests, and you put that up against like you get increased experience. Well, yeah, increased experience is going to win most of the time, but has nobody claimed this ore supply crate that just dropped? I literally just saw it land like right around here, and okay. I don't know what happened to it, but I don't see it on my map. I don't see anybody claiming it, so okay. We're just gonna keep moving over here. And before I forget, because I do this a lot, I'm gonna go set my Hearthstone here. And, as usual, I'm sure, you can maybe forgive me for being a little bit, like, scatterbrained at the moment, but runs like this, right now, like, obviously a lot of setup has gone into this, and I'm on a very tight clock. Okay, so I did not actually get the buffs that I want here. Neither one of those is ideal, which is fine, because this is going to be, based on all of my previous times and how long I think it's going to take me roughly. It's going to be pretty much a 2-hour run. My goal for this run is just sub 2 hours, bare minimum. Sub 2 hours, I think, with all of the preparation that I've done, and given the fact that I've come extremely close to sub 2 hours on runs very similar to this that had slightly less optimization. So, like, we're talking, I've been, like, barely, like, 2 minutes above 2 hours. And I've obviously had a few runs that have gone under 2 hours, but they were using things that have since been nerfed. So I know it is theoretically possible. My current fastest time is, like, around 1 hour, 20 minutes, actually, but unfortunately the strategy that I used was heavily nerfed, so my fastest run to date with absolutely nothing that has been nerfed is, I believe, 2 hours and 2 minutes. So, like, I know it's all theoretically possible. I'm using a very similar version to that route, so, like, a lot of the really big stuff that did get nerfed, unfortunately, I now don't have access to, but I still think with some of the tiny optimizations that I've made, over the months since then, this should definitely be doable. As for how fast I can get this below 2 hours, the unfortunate reality is that it's kind of RNG. And while I can do a lot of planning and I can really try to get this done perfectly, it's RNG, and it's also just really not the easiest thing to execute. There's a lot of uncertainty with this run in general. There's a lot of things that, just kind of need to happen to get right. And it's not the easiest to get right. And, yeah, we'll see. Where is the quest for Jealous? I guess I can just knock out this wanted quest. No Hemet Nessingwary, which is... You don't really expect to get Hemet Nessingwary. It's nice when it happens, but he patrols such a long distance that the odds of actually encountering him is not really that high. but it would have been nice. It's always nice when it does happen. You know, I always feel like my run is kind of blessed whenever I do happen to encounter him at Nessingwary here. Because it's just one, like, tiny little bit of RNG that's going my way. And who knows, maybe I'll still find him right outside this little camp as I'm leaving, and then I can pick up the quests. But I've also gone entire runs without seeing him at Nessingwary. For context, if you're not familiar with it, Hemmet Nessingwary is an NPC that patrols throughout the entire zone of Azurspan. And he has a bunch of wanted quests. And generally speaking, wanted quests are some of the most efficient types of quests in all of these runs, because you just kill one mob, and then you get, like, generally more than a full quest's worth of experience for that. Okay, so we go to the Azure Archives next. I'll just try to be fast about this. So I have, at this point, yeah, about 20 minutes. I think you can see I'm on a different phase from my character, which should be parked on the little tree stump over there on my second account. Yeah. I technically don't need my second account right now, and you may be like, oh, well, isn't it a solo speedrun? Like, why are you using a second account? And all of my solo speedruns are done, like, the actual run itself is done completely solo. The second account here is going to be used purely for information gathering, because one of the unfortunate things about the way that these, what's it called, Dreamsurges kind of work, is that you need information on what the upcoming buff options are going to be, but you can only get that information in the zone. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that a site like Wowhead hasn't actually done a tracker, since it is universal for each region what the upcoming options are. Maybe it would just be too much effort to do that every 30 minutes, I don't know. But since, technically speaking, whenever I was doing these runs in the past, I live streamed a lot of these attempts, like a few months ago when it was on the PTR and stuff. And every single time a new buff thing would happen, I would just ask in chat, hey, can somebody in North America tell me what the options are for voting currently? And then I would just be able to tell, you know, is the one that I need up there? Because the alternative, of course, is I either need to log out and then switch to a character on my account just to check, which is just silly, or, you know, I just pray, right? And, you know, not having access to that information is just, it can make or break the routing that I do. So I think it just makes more sense to at least monitor that information on my own. Even if it, technically speaking, uses a second account, it's effectively as if I was using a third-party website like Wowhead to track that information, if one did exist. It doesn't actually really impact anything else. Also, real quick, I need to switch the rings. Just, well, switch all of the crafted gear. Generally speaking, you know, it's not really going to have a huge scaling difference. The main reason to, of course, get the Darkmoon stuff out of the way first is because it makes my heirloom scale, and having additional item level in all of those heirlooms is really good. Okay, I think everything else is set. I have fried bonefish. Right. Okay, so yeah, like I said, apologies for being a little bit more, I guess, scatterbrained in this run than I usually am. But the thing I was trying to say earlier that I think I kind of forgot to finish talking about is this is the last possible moment that I can get this run. And, you know, the reality of doing one of these things is you're just kind of sitting there waiting for it to start. It reminded me, like, I have a friend who, like, she works for a hospital, and I don't know all the details of this, so if you are, like, a nurse, and I'm butchering the details on how this stuff works, apologies, but she's described it as, like, she has these basically 48-hour shifts or something where she's just on call, and at any point, if there's an emergency, like, you know, sometimes she lives on a college campus, so maybe a drunk person will fall down a flight of stairs, and then, you know, an ambulance is called, and she just has to go. And whenever that's the case, she'll be like, hey, I could do Mythic Plus, right? But if I get paged here, I'm out in the middle of the key, and there's nothing I can do about it. And there's no predicting it. Sometimes all 48 hours, nothing happens. Sometimes it's like for 24 hours straight, there's things happening. And it's just complete uncertainty. You never know when you're actually going to have to jump in there and go. And that's kind of how I felt for these past, 12, 15 hours, I guess at this point. I've been sitting here waiting to get this set up. Because pretty much since the middle of the day, yesterday, I've been ready to go. Like, I've been prepping this run for a little while longer, but I kind of sat down, at least for the last 15 hours, and said, okay, no matter what happens, I am doing the run at some point on this stretch of time. And, a few of my friends messaged me. They were like, hey, do you want to do XYZ thing, for WoW Classic? Which, I'll probably talk about that in a little bit, because that's something I've been spending a lot of my recent time doing. But I've been playing a shit ton of Season of Discovery, and my friends were like, hey, do you want to do Black Fathom Deeps? Obviously we've done it a million times, but we usually do it on the weekend, especially now we've been doing it for our alts. Just like, I can't. If within the next hour or so, things magically just work out, and I get the RNG that I need, and it just happens to... actually, almost forgot. Before I use my Hearthstone. This is why, I always get into this, loop of telling stories and stuff, and I'm, getting myself all comfortable, just, rambling about random crap, but I cannot get distracted and fuck up parts of the speedrun. The thing about a speedrun like this is you can't just start over, right? If I fuck this run up, I don't get another shot for another month. So, yeah. I gotta make this one count. Like, for real, for real. Okay, no Hemet Nessingwary still. Just gonna keep going. As usual, honestly, this part of Azurspan is not terrible, but the introduction parts to Azurspan, which these are all forced prerequisites to a lot of the later sections that are really good, they can be a little bit slow in RP focused, so it may not seem like it's really fast, but it definitely picks up over time. I wonder. I might be able to do the hunt for XP. I've never had it happen to be literally right here. But I don't actually think it's worth doing. I've never been in a situation where I've even considered doing the hunt because it's never lined up like this. But in the middle of a run like this, I don't necessarily want to experiment and be like, would this actually be fast? That's the type of thing that I can do in a fun testing run. That is not like a, break my own world record attempt type thing. Are all my buffs going? Yeah, looks like all my buffs are fine. I won't need to replace this stuff for a little while. My next upgrades are at level 66. That's one of the nice things about this run. You have fairly minimal gear replacements throughout. It's pretty set in stone. So where was I? Yeah, so effectively since middle of the day yesterday, I've been trying to get this done. And I've been awake for even longer because I ranted about this for a while in my Discord. But for all the other people, which I'd imagine the people who read that whole discussion of my Discord are probably a vast minority of the people watching right now, so you'll probably get a kick out of this. And maybe you can tell me if you think that I'm wrong on this topic. Initially, the plan was for me to upload 2 videos, 2 different runs leading up to patch 10.2.5. I had always planned on doing this speedrun because I actually have an updated version of my 60 to 70 leveling guide. Wait, whoa. Hemet Nessingwary. Shit. I need to go dragon riding. I'm clicking all the wrong buttons. I did not expect to see him, so I'm panicking. Fuck. Okay. Which quest did it give me? Bloodhorn. Okay, nice. I can do that one. I never happened to hit Hemet Nessingwary right there as he passes along this section, so got to adapt, right? I was not expecting that, but hey, we got the quests, so there we go. Barely missed the timing, because the nice thing is, right now what I'm trying to think, because like I said, never encountered that particular set of RNG before. When he reaches the Camp Antonitis up there, he will actually get a new set of wanted quests available, and there'll be one over at Camp Antonitis that I can do really quickly. So, like, right now I'm kind of debating, do I go back there since I know he's there just to quickly do that wanted quest? And I think for one quest, well, it's great whenever he happens to literally be in Camp Antonitis, and the best possible thing that you can have, and I've run into that in a few runs when I've gotten really lucky, is if he's about to arrive in Camp Antonitis, you can pick up the quest that I just got for Bloodhorn, and then the moment he actually reaches Camp Antonitis and his quests switch, you grab the one for the nearby wanted quest, and then you have both of them. And then sometimes, if you're really lucky and you have that happen right as you're arriving in Camp Antonitis for the first time, by the time you're done with all of those introduction quests in this area that I did a little while ago, he'll actually be leaving, and then his quests will switch, and you'll be able to pick up one of the ones down south here. So it is possible to get all of the really good quests in one sitting if your RNG is perfect. But this is better than getting none of them, and I have had runs where I get no Hemet Nessingmurray, so this is still, on average, I would say, good luck for encountering Hemet Nessingmurray within a run. It could definitely be a lot worse. Okay, 2:52 a.m., so I have time. So where was I before that? Interrupted my train of consciousness. Yeah, so basically, I planned on doing a different run where, as I'm sure many people have heard at this point, they're adding follower dungeons in 10.2.5. And follower dungeons are like, you get NPCs to accompany you, and they can fill any role in your group and stuff like that. And the way that I've been reading the marketing, and I chose my words there very carefully because I think it is accurate. The way that I have interpreted Blizzard's way of marketing this is that this is a way to do 60 to 70 dungeons with NPCs as an alternative to running with people for, obviously, new players who are, inexperienced with running the dungeons and want, like, a stress-free environment, or, quite frankly, people who just prefer that and don't want to wait in queues because, like, I'm burying the lead here a little bit, but obviously there are multiple reasons why somebody may want to run one of these follower dungeons, is I guess what I'm getting at. But my interpretation of it was, oh hey, it's nice for new players, it's nice for people who just prefer that style of play. It's a pretty cool system overall. So I'll kind of cut to the chase on why I'm talking about this. After trying to do a run that was just follower dungeons from 60 to 70, I had the realization, about 30 minutes into this run, that they do not give experience. And this is not like hyperbole of, oh yeah, they give fuck all experience, they give nothing. They literally just don't give experience. For reference, see these like little bars here at the bottom of my screen? The bars that like, make up a level? A full follower dungeon gives roughly half of one of these bars. The entire dungeon, the whole 15 minutes, entire thing, half of one of these little bars, these tiny bars on screen here, is about what you can expect to get by doing an entire follower dungeon. And there's a number of reasons for that. The main reason, I think, is just Blizzard doesn't want them to be used for leveling for some reason. And, I'll kind of discuss why I think that's insane and how I hope that Blizzard will change that. It's one of those things where, like, look, if I want to be, I could try to make myself really mad about it, and I think it's one of those things where, how does the old saying go? Like, never explain with malice what can just be explained with incompetence or whatever. And I don't really think that Blizzard is sitting here, engineering the experience values to be like, ahaha, we're going to make it so doing these follower dungeons basically gives you nothing. Like 15 minutes for half of a bar is just no experience. In fact, I think it's accidental that it gives any experience at all. So I think it is more so just somehow nobody at Blizzard really thought, like, people are going to want to use this for leveling. And this is kind of the entire thing where I said, like, the discussion that I had on Discord. Obviously, after I realized, wait a second, these can't be used for leveling. There we go. Quest is finally available. I'm like, okay, that just seems wrong. Because when I've been looking at this feature, just the way that Blizzard has described it, I have always been under the impression that this was something that you could use for leveling. And then, a few people in my Discord were like, well, they never explicitly said you will be able to use this for leveling. But then I went back and I checked their marketing stuff. And yeah, at no point do they use the word leveling, right? At no point do they say this is a good opportunity for people to level characters. It's all stuff like, it's a good chance to get gear, which get gear from normal dungeons. Like, quite frankly, the only people who are getting gear from normal dungeons are the people who are so new to the game that they don't know any better. And they genuinely don't understand that there are literally world drop greens that give you better gear. And that's Blizzard's fault, right? That they haven't updated the normal dungeon rewards. They've effectively let normal dungeons, as just a form of content, be completely dead outside of the purpose of leveling. Because that's the only content that they're actually relevant for. It's people leveling up. So it makes sense that if the only set of dungeons that these things are available for are the types of dungeons that people would use while leveling up, shouldn't it be available for leveling? Apparently not. Oh, another player here. Thankfully, it's another Horde player, because if this was an Alliance player, they could have just murdered me, and that would have kind of sucked. I'm going to try to do a big pull here. So, something to keep in mind. Within 3 minutes, Darkmoon Faire will be done, like, for the month on North America. Which means that my Darkmoon Faire buff will become unrefreshable. But if I refresh the buff right before it ends, I will keep the hour-long Top Hat buff carrying over into the next, like, hour. So I'll have that going for me at least. So I could refresh it now, but quite literally every second counts with this thing. So I need to make sure I get it down pretty exact, because I have no idea how long this run is going to take. I don't know if it's going to take me almost right up to 2 hours, in which case this buff would end up falling off right towards the end of the run. So I need to min-max it. But yeah, so point being, I think it is silly to act like normal dungeons or anything other than something used for leveling. So, effectively at that point, if there's no experience to actually be gained by doing these follower dungeons, and I think there's a combination of factors here, like I kind of said, but part of it is just the mob kill experience is so grossly undertuned that killing a boss gives significantly less experience than a single mob out in the open world. I don't know why they specifically tuned the dungeon to give nothing. And completing the dungeon and, completing basically checkpoints throughout the dungeon just doesn't give you experience. Okay, here I will refresh my buff, just because it is close enough to the hour. I think I can never tell exactly how accurate my, like, IRL clock is compared to the WoW clock. Like, this says 1:57, so technically we're 3 minutes off, but my IRL clock says it's only 1 minute off, and I would rather be a tiny bit too early than a tiny bit too late, because if I'm a tiny bit too late, I lose an hour of this buff, and if I'm a tiny bit too early, then, I only lose 2 minutes, so better safe than sorry. Where was I? Right, yeah, the leveling stuff. So personally, to me, I think it makes no sense. And realistically speaking, the only benefit that the actual follower dungeons in their current form provide to players is like a I suppose you could argue this, and this is one of those like marketing buzzword things that, I'm sorry, just doesn't actually apply to 99% of the player base. It gives you a stress-free environment. Voice crack there. You know, what can you do? I just woke up. Stress-free environment to test out your rotation or your abilities. And like, I'm gonna be sorry that it just doesn't really apply to like anybody. I've heard this argument, and a few people gave it to me, and I think a lot of the people in my Discord I know, generally speaking, like to play devil's advocate. I know they're not like trying to argue with me just for the sake of arguing. They're more so, you know, being like, well, did you consider that maybe it's XYZ thing? Because obviously, you know, it's nice to have people who play devil's advocate, you know, within reason, I will say. But I don't think anybody went too far, right? At the end of the day, I think it is nice to have somebody who's willing to, you know, raise some valid points and say, maybe this is what Blizzard was considering. And I think the only point that people consistently brought up is, well, it's a nice way for new players to learn. And the reason why that feels like such a weak argument to me is because that can be true, and it could be good for leveling. Case in point, Final Fantasy. And I know a lot of people hate when you compare World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy, and, you know, when I was having this discussion, a few people even said, well, everybody automatically assumes that it's going to be the same as Final Fantasy, but, you know, that was never explicitly stated, so I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison, and I kind of disagree with that, if I'm being real, because whenever you look at a system like this, also for the record, I know the experience buff faded, but the reality is, if I were to like end the questline right here and come back to it later, I would rather it be at a point where I can just like set my Hearthstone and come back. Because if I were to return to or leave immediately, now that the, you know, big buff is gone, and then come back later, I would lose about like a minute or two actually flying back to where I left off in the questline. Whereas what I can do now is I'm almost to Iskara, so I can finish the last few quests in this chain, which aren't even necessarily like the most efficient quests ever. I missed that one. Oh, what are you gonna do? Fucking, I hate how it screws up your camera. Like, I had that perfectly lined up. Come on. I had that lined up, and then it flicked my camera at the last second, so I missed the shot. But yeah, like, I'm about to get to Iskara, so then I can set my Hearthstone there, and then whenever I come back to Azerspan, I can just do it by hearthing to Iskara, and I can get the thing I want. I'm going to quickly switch over my character while this RP goes on my alt account, just to make sure I can keep track, because I'm going to be leaving Azerspan shortly. Speaking of which, let's see what buffs we got. Okay, so the buff that I want is not active. Let's see. That's unfortunate. That's actually quite unlucky. There is a possibility, of course, that with the way this works out, I may have only gotten just that one experience buff for this run. Especially when a run like this only ends up lasting for 2 hours. Your window to actually get the stuff you want is pretty tight. So this means that the next time I could theoretically see an experience buff is exactly 1 hour from now. And if it doesn't actually happen 1 hour from now, then I will not get another experience buff for the entire rest of the run. Now, keep in mind, it is still worth it to do the Azerspan Dreamsurge stuff, just because Azerspan is already the best zone, and it gives me 25% increased experience. The only problem is that from a world record speedrun perspective, when you try to account for something with and without 50% additional experience, yeah, that does kind of add up. So it can be really hard for me to end up gauging whether this is really like the fastest run that it possibly could be. So we've already missed perfect RNG, I guess, is maybe a better way of saying what I'm trying to say. Which, you know, sucks, but is what it is. Not much you can do. The reality is, getting the perfect RNG in this thing is so impossible either way that there's not much I can do to expect that. What I will do, at least for now, though... Yeah, I'm gonna have to come back here later anyways. I will admit that Oh, that's a little bit demoralizing. I'm gonna be frank. It's like I said, there's literally nothing I can do for that, and like I'm still on track. How should I put this? I shouldn't take this portal. I can just quickly take it back. Minor time loss. I want to actually finish the introduction stuff now. Uh, yeah, there's quite literally nothing I can do to account for that. There are still I can still very easily beat my time. Can I actually dragon ride yet? Oh no, because I'm doing this run on live servers, so old world dragon riding isn't a thing here just yet. Yeah, like I've done all the prep I needed to do. I did anything I possibly could have done to make this go well. You're just at the mercy of RNG. And I think that's one of the hardest things about this. Not only does the starting RNG matter, to the point where, as I said, it took me 13 hours to get this run going. Maybe longer than that, kind of depends. But the RNG that happens after you start the run is kind of make or break, and there's nothing you can really do to account for that or plan for that. So the thing that I hate the most about Dreamsurges is, like, I'm more than happy to wait for a really long time to get, like, the perfect run set up. Obviously, I mean, the reality of a lot of these speedruns I do is they're built around the Darkmoon Faire, which is only available for 1 week out of every month. It's not necessarily an unreasonable amount of time to have for speedrunning attempts, but point being, I'm more than used to having to wait for a specific period of time to be able to do my attempts. But especially a game like World of Warcraft, where you can't just press a reset button and just go, right? It doesn't work like that. Yeah. Gonna take too long. Now I will have to fly back, and then we can take the portal and just fly. That's fine. Unless you get extremely lucky and the ship is already there, you almost always have to just take the portal and fly, and it ends up being faster. That's just how these things go. But yeah, the fact that there's make or break RNG after you've already started the run and it's too late to start over, that's a little bit frustrating. And honestly, it's really just Dreamsurges. It's pretty much the only thing ever, at least since I've started trying to seriously speed level in World of Warcraft, that they've ever done that has been like this. RNG buffs like this are just really not fun. Really, it's not fun to play around for anything like this. And I understand, like I said, that I represent an extremely small portion of the community in terms of, people who are engaging with this type of content. But I know for a fact that most people I've talked to also don't really like having to sit around and wait for the right buff to be able to level up their character. It's just not super fun. Anyways, though, I'm not going to sit here and complain about that. Just gotta roll with what I have. The reality is this run has been set in motion, and there's nothing stopping it now. If I don't get the perfect RNG, so be it. I try again in a month, but at the very least, I'm going to finish this attempt just to see, how fast is this particular run going to be. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So circling back, I guess, to what I was saying before, with the whole follower dungeons thing, I'm probably going to make a video on that just because I think the nature of something like that, and I think the latest thing that I was saying about it before I got distracted with, the buff rolling over, is that, well, people may say, oh, well, no, Blizzard never explicitly compared themselves to Final Fantasy. Like, obviously, Blizzard's not going to do that, but I think we as, human beings with, the gift of rational thought are able to look at context, especially in games in the same exact genre where this is clearly based off of, and be like, oh, what features does this other game that pioneered this type of feature, what does it have? What has it always had? And I think it's safe to assume that if a competitor, in this case World of Warcraft, is making a feature similar to the Final Fantasy one, that they're going to kind of design it for a similar purpose. Like the way that Final Fantasy's follower dungeon system has always worked since its conception is that it is a way to, maybe not necessarily solo level because Final Fantasy has the campaign, but in terms of like giving you experience, it gives you the same amount of experience as a regular dungeon. In terms of quest credit and completion for your campaign, gives you all of the exact same stuff. It is effectively a normal version of the exact same dungeon, except you are doing it with NPCs instead of with real humans. And I actually really like it. I, generally speaking, prefer to do all of my dungeons when doing a campaign in Final Fantasy with the NPC teammates, because I just find it to be more convenient, and a lot of times the NPC teammates are better than the random players you'll get. And they're not, like, amazing, they don't do a ton of damage, but just the average player isn't very good in any game. That's just life. So, I think it's reasonable to assume that this isn't necessarily going to be an efficient method of leveling. I've also been forgetting to use Mark of the Wild. Whoops. It's not necessarily going to be an efficient method of leveling, but it should at least be a viable way to level for people who want to do that. And it feels almost a little bit insulting that it gives such a small amount of experience to be effectively non-existent, to where Blizzard's basically saying, unless you are the exact specific type of player in our marketing material that specifically just wants to practice their rotation and stuff in a stress-free environment, you are going to get nothing out of this feature. And, you know, of course, once again, I had this discussion with people, and the counterpoint was, well, that's not the reason they're doing this. They're not doing this for you. They're not doing this for people who want to level quickly. They're doing it for people who want to, you know, learn their character, and more importantly, they're doing it to test the technology that they're going to be using for things like... hold on. I need to do... Is it delete or unlearn? I think I might have the... Fuck, it's unlearn. Yeah. And then we unlearn. Gonna pick up herbalism. I need to go over to this board, start Sendrax's RP. Just gonna pick Waking Shores, because it's the only one I'm really gonna do. God. This is really annoying. Like, are you serious right now? You're really gonna be a jackass? We're really doing that? I mean, yeah, there's really nothing I can do about that. That's just one of those things that, you know, it just happens, and I can't turn off war mode here. Yikes. Really, dude? Can you fuck off? Okay, this is actually some of the worst luck I've had. For the record, this is why I do not do speedruns live streamed, because, I mean, this happens, right? You just get Jackass McGee who's like, I'm going to spend my time just trying to fuck with another person because I think that that's my idea of fun. I've advocated a very long time that war mode just should not give an experience. But like, he's actually chasing me. This is actually unreal. Okay, this is officially the worst luck I've ever had with griefing players in a speedrun ever. In fact, I'm actually going to report you. This is gameplay sabotage. I mean, yeah, there's no griefing thing, but for the record, I should note, this is... I'm sure that there's going to be some, you know, PvP endies, you know, in the comments who are like, reporting. Blizzard has explicitly stated you cannot do this, right? Griefing players who are clearly trying to quest that shit right there, like, if he wants to attack me, fine. That's annoying, right? But intentionally chasing me down when I am clearly just trying to avoid him and get my quest done, just to prevent me from questing, Blizzard has actually said that you are not allowed to do that. So, I actually don't really know what I can do right now. I'm kind of fucked. Effectively, the only thing I can do at this exact moment is just continue questing an Ezra's fan. I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit. I'm actually, you know what, I'm gonna let, I hate having to do this, because it's just one of those things where I generally like to give live commentary in these runs, but the reality is right now, I am very tilted. It is very difficult to try and focus on one of these runs and keep a cool head and try to give commentary and, quite frankly, to not get ridiculously upset when, like, the days of prep work that you've done just completely go to shit, especially when it's just at the hands of another player for no other reason than, like, I just feel like being an asshole today. And, okay, so Haraldin from the future stepping in again to another speedrun. And the first thing that I want to comment on is that obviously things seem pretty bad right about now. This was definitely the low point of the speedrun, but it does get better. It's pretty much all up from here. At this point in time, you know, just for context, like internally I was thinking I might not even be able to upload this video because the reality of a speedrun attempt like this is obviously I want it to be good. So if it's just yet another speedrun that fails to hit my expectations, I mean, I've had those before and those just get shelved. Maybe I do something with, you know, the bonus footage, but there would be no point for me to actually upload that. So I'm at this point thinking, man, all I wanted was to get sub 2 hours, right? That's the entire reason that I was doing this run. Frankly, I was hoping to get even better. Like, my stated goal was sub 2 hours, and, you know, as you can see by obviously the title of the video, I did manage to achieve that. But it was not by a large margin. And I was kind of hoping that I would be able to get, like, closer to an hour and a half. Maybe more realistically, like an hour 45. Because an hour 45 with, like, reasonable RNG is definitely achievable. And an hour and a half, I think, might be the fastest that this particular route could theoretically get, but it would require, like, near perfect RNG that I just really couldn't rely on. If it were to happen, it would be an extremely low chance. I don't know technically the odds for it, but it would be very, 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 very unlikely. And it would also require me to make, like, 0 mistakes and play perfectly. So the odds of all of that aligning in a single run is kind of low. But I do still think that this run could have been better, though, frankly, at no fault of my own, which is kind of why I was bummed out here. Did manage to kind of pull it off in the end, but yeah, it sucks, you know, when you do all this planning and I, like I said, sat here for 14 hours, and I think that's the main thing that I want to touch upon here, because I started talking throughout this video about, you know, the setup and kind of the reason why I was so all over the place and just generally really tired and in many cases like struggling to speak clearly. And that's largely because what you're listening to throughout most of this run is I had literally just woken up, for context, because effectively I was sitting at the NPC, or well, not the NPC, but like the Azure Span on my alt account watching the buff timer for literally 14 hours. I kind of talked about this a little bit. And after I had finished, or failed to finish, that attempt at the follower dungeon thing, I decided, okay, I mean, I'm gonna set up this run, and I started that early afternoon, and it just never came around. I'm just sitting there waiting. The opportunity, the buffs I needed just didn't happen. There is actually a point around, I want to say it was like 10 p.m., where the potential to get one of the 2 buff sequences I wanted was available, but it didn't happen. So if you go back to the very start of the video, I have some like B-roll where I'm like explaining generally like, you know, how the run is going to play out, because I kind of just jumped into the recording because I didn't have time to start. So I was already under the assumption that, okay, I'm going to have to do some post-recording thing to explain the introduction of this run, and then we'll cut to like where I actually, you know, get in and start going. But I need footage for that, so when I was thinking of potentially like at 10 p.m. last night, like, oh, this might be the start of a run, I obviously recorded that, so I have like 10 minutes of footage of me potentially setting up this run, and then of course I look at the buff doesn't hit what I wanted to hit, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is a false start, effectively. I can't actually start here. And then I go back to just doing whatever. But the reality is, since I had woken up fairly early to get that follower dungeon speedrun attempted, and I had, you know, tried and failed to do that, and then I'd been sitting here all day. I mean, I'm not a superhuman, so, like, you know, by the time it gets to, like, 11, 12 p.m., or I guess 11 p.m., 12 a.m., like I'm starting to just collapse, right? I'm exhausted. I've just been sitting here kind of, trying to be on standby in case I need to start this run any second now. It's, very stressful because at any moment, every 30 minutes I have to check, and there's that like feeling of, am I going to have to drop whatever I'm doing and go start the run? And I wanted to, take a break because I'm like, at this point, right? If the run was to start right now, I'm like dead tired. So I started pretty much from like 11:30, taking like 15-minute power naps back to back to back. 15-minute naps, set a bunch of timers, wake up, check the buffs. 15-minute nap. And I mean, it's just, it kind of all just blurs together, right? From then on. That was, 11:30? And at that point, I'm just kind of like, the RNG is probably not going to happen. This is just yet another time where I'm going to try to do this run, because something I actually don't think I mentioned at all throughout the speed run is I tried to do this exact run back in December. No, not December, November. It was, no, it was December. It was the first week of December, I believe. I forget exactly when. It was either December or November. I tried to start doing this run, and the timings just didn't line up. And I was doing exactly what I did here. I sat there for something like 12 hours, and at no point when the buffs were overlapping, that being Darkmoon Faire and Azurspan Dreamsurge, did I happen to get the stuff I needed to start this run. And it was kind of one of those things where I didn't need to get this video out immediately, so I'm just like, okay, I'll wait for January. It sucked. I would have liked to get it done then, but wasn't so much I could do. I could either do a shitty speedrun, or I could do the intended thing that I wanted and just wait another month, and that's what I did. So I'm kind of sitting here thinking, man, it's going to happen again, and I'm going to have to wait till like February or something. More realistically, I probably would have at least put out some speedrun this week, because I really wanted to get one completed just for testing purposes, and also because I have a leveling guide, the final version of the 60 to 70 Dragonflight guide that I will be posting probably like in a week or so, and I really wanted to make sure I did one final testing run before I publish that guide. Ideally, of course, I wanted it to be a faster version of all my other runs, just to make sure that, yes, this can get better than I think it can, or it can get sub 2 hours is the main thing I wanted to try. But, worst case scenario, I probably would have just on Sunday today done some run without Darkmoon Faire and said, fuck it. It just is what it is. But obviously, since this run is happening, finally, after many, many, many consecutive power naps, waking up, checking, and then going back to sleep, I woke up at like 2:15. I checked the buff, and I went, oh, fuck. It's there. It's actually there at the last possible moment. And I will kind of explain why this is a little bit problematic later, and you'll be able to see it in action later in the run. But 2:30, it is like, it feels like the universe is kind of trolling me, because the buff starting at 2:30 a.m. specifically is simultaneously like the last possible time when I can even start the run, but also the only possible time when I can start the run but still have it be scuffed. And I'll touch upon that because I kind of briefly explain that later. But basically, if the buff started at 3 a.m., this run would not have been possible. So 2:30 was the last possible time that I could have gotten it, because Darkmoon Faire ends at 3 a.m. And I guess at this point in the run, I think we're at, where are we, like, around the 4-hour mark, I think? So, or not 4-hour mark, 40-minute mark. So around the 40, 50-minute mark. So you've already seen, and I've already explained that kind of thing about how Darkmoon Faire is over, and I had to refresh the buff at the last second. Yeah, so I've already explained that bit. And the thing about that is, if it had been any later, obviously I couldn't have even done the run, because without Darkmoon Faire, I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose, right? If I don't have a Darkmoon Faire buff, then there is no reason for me to even do the run right now. I would have just gone to sleep and done it later today when I'm not completely exhausted, because at that point there's no difference. So it was specifically this overlap, which is why it needed to be done before 3 a.m., why I was specifically checking all these times. But if it had been any other time, even 2 a.m., then I would have been able to get the full extent of the Darkmoon Faire buff for the entirety of the run. Because I would have had the 1 hour from 2 to 3, and then right before 3, I would have refreshed the buff, and it would have carried over another 1 hour. And it, in this case, would have lasted literally the exact length of this speedrun. And since I already knew that my goal was 2 hours, if it doesn't last for, or if the run goes past that and I lose the Darkmoon Faire buff, well then I failed my goal anyway, so it's a moot point. So starting at 2:30 is quite literally like the worst possible time it could be, kind of, other than not starting the run at all, because technically speaking, I can still attempt it. I still get Darkmoon Faire for most of it, so that's why I was able to justify to myself, fuck it, I'm gonna try it. But it still feels really bad because it is the only possible time frame that would give me poor efficiency. So, you know, that's just how it goes, I guess. And if I had had that extra Darkmoon Faire buff, it actually would have made this run a little bit easier. It definitely would have saved time, obviously. 10% XP is 10% XP, but especially, yeah, as you'll see, it gets down to the wire. This is one of the closest speedruns I've ever had, but I don't know. That was a little bit frustrating, admittedly. And the PvP thing, man, I can't even believe that shit happens. It's there are, I don't know. It's a very divisive topic because the reality is you're gonna get a lot of people who just kind of, you know, don't really think critically on any subject at all, who are going to see that, and their immediate response is going to be the classic, don't PvP or don't turn on PvP if you don't want to PvP. Because that is, like, you know, the go-to response. And in, like, other versions of WoW, I can kind of understand that. Like, in Classic, you know, if you chose to roll on a PvP server, then, hey, you know, you're kind of opening yourself up to that. You made that choice. And, like, I picked Chaos Bolt, which is an RP PvP server for Classic SOD, and sometimes I get ganked, and it fucking sucks, but, hey, I made that choice, so I don't complain. But I do think that the argument is a little bit reductive, and it kind of ignores a lot of the reasons why people, at least in more recent years of WoW, have been forced to engage in world PvP. For starters, obviously, there was a long period of time before the introduction of War Mode where a lot of people would just go to a server for a raiding guild. And whether that was a PvP or PvE server, it didn't matter. So a lot of times, if everybody's friends were playing in a guild that was on a PvP server and somebody hated PvP, they may be forced into it. And that could suck. So that is why Blizzard introduced War Mode, which I think fundamentally is a nice idea, but I have always said that I think War Mode having an experience bonus is just stupid. It, you know, an endgame bonus. So War Mode giving you, like, additional, whatever it used to be, like, artifact power or Order-Hole resources, or I don't even know what you would get now, whatever the stupid new currencies are that it gives you from world quests. Even, like, hell, I don't even care if it gives you a reputation bonus, which I don't think it gives you a reputation bonus anymore, though there are War Mode specific world quests, like the PvP ones, so in a sense it does. I think that's fine. Some people complain about that. To me, whatever. You know, if you're a level 70 and another level 70 is fighting you, that's totally fine. I don't really give a shit. It can suck, but it's whatever. The problem that I have with Blizzard giving an experience bonus to War Mode is it kind of acts like there is literally any reason whatsoever for people in the modern era of WoW to world PvP at low levels amongst each other while leveling in War Mode, which, like, for starters, obviously a vast majority of the player base, myself included, is going to be using War Mode just for the experience bonus, because duh, and for these speedruns, I literally have to use it because obviously the stated intent of these runs will and has always been to use every advantage possible to level quickly, so if it gives me an experience bonus, I gotta use it. So I don't really have a choice in the matter. But also, leveling these days just doesn't work like that. I mean, for starters, obviously, as you can see there, I'm leveling in max level zones because everything scales, so you have level 70s just chilling in the same area that I'm doing my leveling, and there's no way that's going to be actual PvP. There is no universe where a person leveling in Dragonflight is going to have anything but a completely one-sided fight against somebody who's a level 70. It just sucks. There's absolutely no fucking reason to incentivize that. And because of the way level scaling works, half the time, if you see somebody out in the open world, there's no guarantee that they're going to be doing the zone at the exact same level that you are. So the vast majority of cases, you're just going to have somebody getting completely steamrolled by a person in the exact same zone, but they're 20 levels higher, so they just win. And I don't know, it's just dumb. I have said ever since War Mode was very first introduced, a very long time ago at this point, that it is absolutely stupid, that it has an experience bonus tied to it. I know there are a good amount of people who agree with me, but I will say that generally seems to be an unpopular opinion. A lot of people are like, oh, but if you didn't have the bonus, then what motivation would there be for people to turn on War Mode? I don't know, maybe because they actually enjoy PvP? Like, if your argument is that your gameplay is so inherently unfun that you need to give people carrots on a stick to actually get them to participate in it, then maybe, like, that's not a form of content worth trying to encourage people to participate in. And I'm obviously being a little bit hyperbolic. I know there are people who enjoy PvP, but then just, like, let them fucking enjoy PvP with other people who enjoy PvP, completely detached from any sort of external reward structure that gives you bonuses for completely unrelated content. It's just dumb. It has always been dumb, and I think it's time for Blizzard to change that, because it sucks. It sucks potentially losing a run like this and losing all of my buffs and stuff because some level 70 decided I'm going to kill this guy, and there's really nothing he can do about it. I mean, I escaped, but if he had caught me, the fuck would I do? Anybody else who didn't have Goblin Gliders is just dead there, and they lose all their buffs, and that fucking sucks. Anyways, I think it was about 16 minutes that I needed to talk for, and I think I filled that quota. And you're about to hear me finally get excited again, and then I will continue talking for, the rest of the run, and, things are looking up. So, cut back to past Haraldin. Hopefully I timed myself correctly. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, okay, there's hope. There's hope. Hi. Okay, I feel good enough about that to comment again. So what am I gonna do? So obviously, there's the experience boost. And I just kind of overshot some of the quests, so I'm just gonna back down here. That caught me off guard. Okay, so we have potential here. This is going to be active when the timer is approximately at 1 hour and 34 minutes. And I don't think I will be just at 60 yet. So basically what I'm trying to think is how much more do I do here and how much do I leave there? Because obviously, if I just abandon Azurspan here, then I'm effectively saying that I don't think... Where I missed some quest. Where's the quest that I missed? Come on, where? Fuck, yeah, there it is. It's the Great Shokari. Okay, so effectively, if I just go in 30 minutes in Azurspan, I'm conceding the fact that it will take me about a good half of that to be able to reach max level. Ideally, of course, if that buff had been right now, this run still would have been, like, completely salvageable in terms of, like, really good world record run. Like I said earlier, generally speaking, good RNG for one of these runs is you get a full hour's worth of that experience bonus. And in the absolute perfect, insane RNG would be if I got an hour and a half worth of that experience bonus. I would have needed 3 instances of it within a single run. That's incredibly rare. I have yet to actually have that happen in one of these runs. In one of my, testing runs very early on, I had that happen. But in none of my serious, actual attempts, I've actually gotten that RNG. The best I've gotten is pretty much what I just said, of 1 hour of a straight, experience buff. Or not straight, but, at least within the time that I want to run. Effectively, what I've gotten here is I've technically seen the buff twice throughout the start of the run, but I'm getting more like 40 minutes worth. Because with my current estimates, I believe that I can also at this point just close my my second account that's been running in the background. It shouldn't have any noticeable impact on performance, but, there's just no reason to have it open anymore. technically I could have closed it before, but I had no idea whether or not I would need it, so I didn't want to take the risk of having to, like, reopen it in the middle of the speedrun. But at this point, I have all the information I need for the rest of the run. But I'm going to effectively get, like, 40 minutes worth of the experience buff, which is not terrible. It's definitely better than only having it up for one instance. But it does kind of suck a little bit. And effectively what I can do... I'm trying to think of how I want to handle that. I think the best way to do it is there's a large concentration of quests in the southeast part of the zone. And I'm sure something that I know one or two of you are going to be thinking, because the thought just crossed my mind, and I'm going to explain to you why I don't think it's a good idea, though I understand, is why don't you just pre-complete a bunch of these quests instead of turning them in now? And the reality is travel time. Now, pre-completing quests in the other part of the zone is not a bad idea, and it is something I may do, but the reality is that if I were to pre-complete these and then try to, once the buff is up, head back, turn these in, and then go to a new questing area, that would be inefficient. So if I am pre-completing any quests and then handing them in with the buff, I would want to make sure that I'm doing that within a centralized area. And the thing about a lot of this stuff is... Oh, is that... It's a Mechanome, but they're level 65. Okay, so I could fuck them up. Also, real quick, I am just going to get my food buff. It does help. It's, maybe a tiny bit of a time loss. I should have found a way to sneak this in earlier. Yeah. Okay. On the topic, like, in a more lighthearted manner, I kind of want to... I did want to discuss it at some point. What I hopefully am going to remember to talk about and fill in the past 30 minutes with is hopefully I told you all about... Finished telling the story of how I set up this run, and basically why I'm a little bit scattered. I effectively haven't slept much, and it's, I've just been kind of going on and off, like waking up, checking to see if the RNG is there, and then I, woke up 10 minutes before, and hey, there we go. So that, hopefully I've told you. But these runs are exhausting, and, like, I enjoy doing these in the sense that I want to make sure that I at least send off these 60 to 70 runs with something that is as good as it can realistically be. Like a run that, the best possible run that I can put together. And this is the best possible run that I can put together. There are theoretical better runs with perfect RNG, but the problem with World of Warcraft speedrunning in this sense is that every single attempt would not only require me to level a new Druid up to level 60, but it would also require me to buy all of the stuff that I use during this run, which, isn't a massive expense, but if you're doing multiple attempts, it starts to add up a little bit. And quite frankly, like, in regular speedruns... In regular speedruns where I'm, just trying to go for like a 6-hour run, like back in the day, 6 hours was considered good for me. For some of my, full 10 to 60 runs and stuff, or back in the day it was like, 10 to 50, right? That was like a good time, quote unquote, based on, my usual runs. And at that point, yeah, it's a big time investment, but once the actual prep work is done, once all of that is said and done, and I've gotten all of that set up, all I need to do is sit down for 6 hours and knock out the run. That's just how it goes. And generally speaking, the RNG in previous versions of WoW leveling has just not been so extreme where I need to do anything beyond that. And I never, outside of sometimes queuing for dungeons and stuff, I'm like, do you get the right dungeons? And that's a little bit annoying, but generally speaking, the RNG balances out. And if I get really unlucky at the start, at least it's not much time lost, because the difference between doing all this testing for a 60 to 70 run and a 10 to 60 run is that while it does suck if I get really bad dungeon RNG at the start of a 10 to 60 run at like level 15, I am still only level 15. I just get a new allied race at level 10 and do another attempt. And yeah, I had to spend a little bit of gold to get to that point. Sure, does it suck? Yes, but it's doable. It's not the end of the world. For a 60 to 70 run, it is the end of the world. It's bad. You cannot replicate that. You have to then level up an entirely new character. And that makes it a little bit challenging to consistently get a lot of these attempts, at least for Dragonflight. So I am kind of at the point where I no longer want to do 60 to 70 attempts for Dragonflight, because, I mean, Dreamsurges are here to stay, right? And while they're kind of fine for casual leveling, I've kind of already expressed how I think they're just insanely toxic for these types of speedruns that I do. It's just miserable. And the bigger thing is just the thing I joked about earlier about, almost being on call and having to sit there all day. Like, it wasn't the worst thing ever. I played Shogun 2 Fall of the Samurai, which is a banger game, for like a good 8 hours. I'm just sitting there. It's like every 30 minutes, check the thing. All right, nope, still not available. All right, back to Shogun 2. I just kept playing Shogun 2, and I fucking love that game. It's amazing. By the way, if you've not played Total War games, definitely would recommend it. Total War is like just the franchise in general. While Creative Assembly, the company, is in complete fucking shambles at the moment because of a bunch of terrible business decisions, which, is what it is. That, they fucked up. Their games are still amazing. And Total War, like, pretty much all the games I just absolutely love. Warhammer especially, but like I said, I've been playing Fall of the Samurai a fucking ton lately. It's just such a fucking good game. It's so addicting. I could sit here and gush about that for literally hours and how much I fucking love it, but we only have so much time in these runs, and I do want to somewhat focus. The point being, like, I guess it's not the worst way for me to spend my time. I didn't, not enjoy playing Fall of the Samurai for 8 hours straight, but it's also problematic because there's a lot of work that I kind of want to get done on other stuff that isn't playing Shogun 2 for 8 hours straight, and I just can't when I'm prepping for this run, because I just have no idea how long it's going to take. And it's also like one of those where if I'm working on a video, for instance, everybody's different in that regard. Okay, there's an innkeeper here. That's kind of what I was looking for. So I'm going to just go here whenever the experience buff rolls around again, and we're going to... There's no real good way to do this, but I'm going to pick up where we left off, and hopefully Griefer McGee is not still sitting there getting his rocks off camping low-level players. We can hope. Maybe he's, found something better to do with his life. But as far as like working on videos or getting anything productive done, I am generally of the mindset where I need to like sit down and like dedicate a set amount of time. I've said before, I have ADD, and generally speaking, if I am constantly interrupting myself with like, in the middle of a task, my efficiency goes down the tubes, and it becomes impossible for me to focus and get any meaningful work done. So effectively, whenever I do one of these runs, I'm just sacrificing more than a day, really. It's like over 24 hours. Because while I did spend 15 hours straight getting this set up, it's, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it before that, and I have to kind of warp my schedule around it. So while there are theoretically chances that I will have to replicate this run in the future, like specifically, unfortunately, my Darkmoon top hat, it's only a 10% bonus, but I'm going to end up losing it actually for the final bit of the Dream Surge lining up. I think, excuse the mess, I need to abandon this quest, right? Where is it? Oh no, this is a different one. Okay, we're good. Yeah, the frustrating thing is, it's actually, right now, This is literally the middle of the night. It is 3:44 a.m. here. So a lot of times I like to do these runs in the middle of the night because even if there are potential griefers in war mode, you don't tend to run into them a lot at, demon hours like this. So pretty much ever since my first speedrun ever, I've been doing runs at the crack of dawn, effectively. This time, actually, it was completely unrelated. This time, I would have done the run whenever it actually happened that the thing lined up. Just so happens that it was right now. Professions, okay, we have herbalism, so I'm trying to, like, the unfortunate thing is I was in the middle of doing the herbalism thing, where I have to pick up all these quests. I'm trying to remember, I think this is where I left off. If I miss one of them, so be it. I'm a little bit frazzled right now, unfortunately. Thankfully, I don't think I have any leatherworking stuff. Yeah, I've skipped doing that in the more recent versions of this. They're working on learn. Train me in mining. This. I need to learn Dragon Isles blacksmithing. And Dragon Isles first craft bonus. Is the RP still going? It feels like it's been taking longer than usual. Let me just... Yep. Oh, right as I'm, like, second-guessing it. I'm pretty sure that me running over there actually didn't do anything, though, because it's not proximity-based to that degree. It, works from much farther. I'm gonna get these crafts done, and then I'm gonna start the next bit of RP. How close am I to finishing? I have a few more crafts left, I think. There we go. Talk to Rathian, Solistra. There we go. Okay, I actually didn't finish that craft. Okay, I'm still getting credit, I think. One more? After this? Does this give me XP? That is probably the last one. I'm not even going to bother trying the very last one, because I'm pretty sure that's it. Mining, unlearn. There we go. I think that is all of the quests. There we go. Okay, Sendrax is going to do a little bit of RP, and then we're just going to finish up these quests. Just trying to monitor. I am focusing a little bit. I'll be honest, I wanted to, as I said before, I wanted to have this run be, like, as usual, more of the, talking in the moment type thing. I usually like to do those runs. It's a little bit trickier with these 60 to 70 runs. That's another reason why, I guess, to kind of wrap up that point. I'm probably not really going to be doing these runs anymore, at least specifically for 60 to 70. Now, I did also finish, quite recently, I made a tier list for all the different leveling specs, because I was doing testing runs for every single one of the leveling specs in Dragonflight, and then I finally made the tier list and ranked them all. You know what? I'm going to do something nice I don't normally do. He gave me power word for it. There you go. Come on. Why is it able to hit me from here? I'm surprised it can hit me in midair from that distance. Yeah, so all of my initial testing runs are done. I obviously haven't streamed in like a little over a month. And, part of that is just, personal reasons, kind of burnout to a degree. And there's like a few improvements to my stream that I want to make before I like do that anymore. And it's kind of hard to do that when you're streaming every single week. So just decided I think it's better to take like a quick break for stuff like that. And I will still do like type speedruns kind of like this format going forward, but specifically 60 to 70, and generally speaking, 10 to 60, I'm not really going to be doing quite as many, just because one of the other things is when the War Within comes around, I'm obviously going to be doing a bunch of those runs, and I can't burn myself out, right? Like, if I were doing really intense, like, super fast speedruns like this 24/7, I would just be dead. This is, it may not seem like it at a glance, and, like, an individual run is not that bad, but, like, I just got off of 6 months of, like, non-stop planning and executing these runs for every single spec in the game, on top of the other, like, world record attempts that I was doing. Like, I did the Kul Tiran 10 to 70, I did a few different, like, the Fury Warrior 60 to 70, this run, stuff like that, and it can be a lot. I'm gonna be real, it adds up. So, if I'm gonna continue doing this in the War Within, which I would like to, obviously I need, like, at least some breathing room, where I'm not constantly in a state of just working my ass off on these types of things. And, there's a lot of other projects that I would like to get done as well that I can't really focus on when all I'm doing are the speedruns nonstop, so. I will be experimenting with some other slight variations. Eventually, I know I've teased it for a very long time, I have like a challenge run format that has long been in the works and will come eventually, but admittedly, Blizzard's very accelerated release schedule when it comes to World of Warcraft content in the, past few months and going forward this year has left me with little breathing room for, I guess, passion projects like that, for lack of a better word. And there's a lot of stuff that I would love to finish and just haven't really found the time to. So we'll kind of see how it goes with things like that. But I guess one thing that I plan on doing relatively soon is I'm actually in the process of planning a speedrun for Season of Discovery. And I know, a lot of people who watch my channel are retail-only players. A good amount of players play both. There are some classic-only players, though that is definitely a little bit more of a smaller section. I would say while I cover classic, generally speaking, I would not consider myself to be a classic WoW channel, but it is something that I still play and enjoy a lot. And I've been really having fun with Season of Discovery. It has been consuming the vast majority of my free time for, like, the last month or month and a half, I guess, at this point. Ever since it came out, I've been playing it all the fucking time and leveling a shit ton of characters. And I think a 1 to 25 speedrun would actually be pretty cool. It's something that I've been kind of wanting to do pretty early on since I thought about it. And I don't have, like, how do I put this? Not all of my plans for it are 100% set in stone. And I will say, while I really, really, really want to get this video done, it is one of those things where if a bunch of other stuff pops up last second, that I just really feel I need to cover that, or there's, like, better topics that I need to be working on. The speedrun is one of those things where it's experimental. I have no idea how well a classic speedrun like that will ever perform, because I've never done a speedrun in Classic WoW before. It'll be pretty much the same format that I've done for these runs, but I have no idea if the interest is there. And, I would love to do it either way, just because, like, this whelp just refuses to be interacted with. I want to do it either way, because it's something I personally think is fun, but it is definitely kind of one of those uncertain things. And that can be a little bit scary sometimes, spending all this time working on something where you have no idea how well it's going to perform, whether or not people are going to like it, etc., etc. So we'll see, but I have actually started preparation for it, like, for real, for real. Especially, it's one of the other things I should note, and this is kind of one of the other reasons why I've always been tentative about doing a classic speedrun, is that classic is one of those games where if you're just leveling casually, without any sort of fancy stuff, it's just not very interesting to watch. And now I've streamed classic leveling a few times in the past, and for a stream type thing, it actually is pretty fine. The nice thing about streaming classic WoW is it gives me a great opportunity to just talk to people in chat because it's so laid back. And generally speaking, whenever I am leveling a character in classic, I am not speedrunning. I'm actually just effectively slow running, taking my time and making sure that I take in everything and don't rush and stuff like that, and just use it as like a chill way to interact with people in chat. And for that purpose, it works. But in terms of like a completely fresh character, like effectively the retail version of no heirlooms, no fancy anything, I just think that would be really boring. I'm going to be real. And I just would not want to do a speedrun like that. And it's really hard in Classic to put together a very fancy speedrun because I guess it kind of depends on your level of preparation, right? There's kind of a bar. Then one of the nice things about retail is despite how it may appear on the surface, I'm like, oh my god, he's doing all this crazy stuff for his speedruns. It's actually really not that much in the grand scheme of things. Oh my god, this is getting stun locked there. Like, all things considered, the amount of items that I have for this 60 to 70 run really isn't that much. Over the years, the amount of things that you need has been kind of lowered by Blizzard, and the vast majority of the things that I prepare for the 60 to 70 runs is crafting things, which I personally hate the fact that crafting leveling exists. I wish it was not a thing. Blizzard chose to make it a thing. And if they're going to make it efficient, which at least doing it during the RP for the free experience, it is efficient, what can I say? Then I'm going to have to do it, right? That's just how it is. But that is basically the only thing outside of generic consumables that you need for 60 to 70 leveling. And there's like a few other things for 10 to 60 leveling, gun shoes, goblin gliders, all that fun stuff. But it's not that much. Whereas, and I think one of the bigger ones, obviously, is heirlooms. The fact that you have heirlooms, and heirlooms are, by and large, there have been times in the past where that was not the case, but right now, by and large, heirlooms are the best item you can have in any given slot at any given level. So there is just no reason to not use heirlooms if you have them. There are some very, very slight exceptions. Like, you'll notice I'm only running a single heirloom ring, and that is because, like, that is the one rare exception where the crafted ring that you get at 319 item level outscales the heirloom ring. You can see this is only just now passing it and scaling, but it is also missing a socket, so it is still worse than the crafted ring. And obviously the crafted ring starts at a fixed level, so stuff like that is better. I replaced my heirloom necklace because having 3 sockets is nutty. So there are very, very niche cases like that where getting a crafted piece is significantly better, but that is never the case for 10 to 60 at this point. There are no crafted items or things like that that are better. It used to be that rings were better than heirloom rings, crafted rings, but they changed the scaling a few years ago on heirloom rings to make them much better, and ever since then, it has not been worth it to use the crafted rings over the heirloom rings. And this is unique equipped, but I'm running 1 heirloom ring anyways. Also, just so you can see, yep, Darkmoon Faire is closed, requires the Darkmoon Faire. So that's another one of those things where it's just unfortunate timing, right? It doesn't really matter. I'm effectively missing out on 10% XP for the final 20 minutes of the run, which sucks, but it's not actually going to be a big impact when we get down to brass tacks. Also, So now I'm at the point where I need to start considering how I transition into Azure Span. Because this set of quests is efficient up until this point. After this, Waking Shores falls off pretty hard, but there are still all of the profession quests over at the Ruby Life Shrine that I want to turn in, but I don't want to finish the Sendrax quests because they have a pretty big amount of RP. Now, generally speaking, it's worth doing just because, you know, you're going to have to do it anyway, and there are a few quests at the Ruby Life Shrine that are worth completing. But here, I think it would just genuinely be faster, especially since I'm just going to Hearth out, to just zip to the Ruby Life Shrine, knock that out. Survival of the fittest. And we'll see. This is actually one of the harder parts of this run in terms of focus, so let me actually do just that and focus up for a little bit and make sure I'm not fucking up here, because every second counts at this point. Because we have effectively 2 minutes, give or take. Actually, the buff may have already started in the Azure Span. That's fine, though. This is still worth completing, because we're gonna leave here really quickly, and this is a very, very, very big chunk of experience. It's gonna knock back. I'm just gonna Skull Bash. And obviously, Farava getting the kill experience, so I need a few more books. I don't need to worry about where Sendrax ends up. So, actually, yeah. Let me just do this. Because there's books down here that I can grab. There's a potion. This is one book. Come on. Why it interrupted my cast there. And I believe I'm still outdoors and can interact with this book here. And then I can just turn it all into Sendrax in the air. Yep. Should I get out of combat? I want to be dragon riding right now. Oh my god, I did not expect there to be a mob right on top of that cliff. I just need to get to somewhere where I can dragon ride, please. Okay. We're actually in like the last 10 minutes or so of the run here. May not seem like it, we still have like a level and a half to go, but I'm about to do a pretty big turn-in, and then I think you'll notice that the last bit of Azure Span tends to go by very fast, especially with that bonus rolling. Right. Come on. I hate how it bugs out like this. Come on. I'm actually not even going to bother with the other quest. I just want to get to Azure Span as quickly as possible. Okay. Let's see. So I have these turn-ins. This was the Hemet Nessingwary wanted quests, which, you know, glad we had those. This. Come on. And... oh, fuck. That could be a problem. At the very least, I'm almost level 70 now, so if this guy does try to gank me for whatever reason, I can actually somewhat reasonably defend myself. Like, I'm not completely dead. The nice thing about Guardian Druid is they have a lot of tools at their disposal. So, yeah, I'm not completely fucked. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Because I definitely can't actually. I almost never use this spell. I don't know if it's actually going to work because of Thrash. Seems like it's holding. I very rarely find a use where I actually need to use Entangling Roots, because the vast majority of the time, it's just better to kill something than keep it in place. But this is one of the few cases where that guy just has a lot of health, and I don't really want to have to kill him. Like, these mobs, yeah, it's easy enough. Just blast through them. Come on. A little bit unfortunate. I'm out of combat. Nice. Whew. Actually leashed at the perfect time. Any longer and it would have been a little bit inefficient. Blues found. Okay. And yeah, I do have the buff. Come on. Yes. Barely didn't get the cast interrupted. That's what I love to see. What I don't love is these mobs pathfinding really poorly and taking forever to get down the stairs so I can cleave them. Am I still in combat? What is that one doing? It is just going all around the world to try and reach me. Yeah, that's whack. I did not think it would take that long to get downstairs, or I would have just stayed up there and killed it. Come on. Come on. Game? Game? Hello? Jesus Christ. I must have had like a secret dot on me or something that wasn't actually being displayed. I don't know why I just kept interrupting my cast. Let's hope it doesn't do it again. Yeah, it's doing it again. That is weird. I've had that happen like once or twice, but never that frequent. Just constant chain interrupting. It's a little bit annoying. Okay, so I finished this. What do I want to do? One more level. Worst case scenario, if I'm a little bit short on experience. I'm trying to think, what is like the best way to go about this? And there's a little bit of RP. Yeah, so I'm gonna want to do the Furbolg quests just because they're right here and they're pretty good. Then I usually do a small section of quests in here. There's a rare mob. There's a rare mob up here. And another rare over here. And then, I mean, I'm going to end up finishing the run pretty much in the exact same spot I did in my Kultiran run, which would be right up here in Theron's Watch. Though I actually may end up progressing further along in that questline based on where I'm currently at. 20 minutes for one level? Yeah, we got this. And, like, look, this run could have obviously been significantly faster. I wish it had been significantly faster. I have a lot of points that I can actually spend. It's one of those things where, like, you level so fast in these runs, it's just impossible to remember to spend all your points properly. I'm actually just going to auto-fly. It's easier when you don't have to dynamic fly. Flashing Claws, Ursox Fury. This stuff doesn't even matter. I don't really care. I'm just going to click passive things that won't add random abilities to my bar. Okay. Yeah, it's a shame. There's obviously You know, I was pretty upset earlier because the thing that I was worried about earlier, I don't know if I got completely saved by this buff being up. The run being not a complete train wreck was saved by me getting this Dream Surge learnings. Because at least now we are on, I would say this is average RNG. You could argue that it is slightly above average RNG because I had the all buffs thing at the start, but realistically speaking, I was literally waiting 15 hours to start the run with that, so I wouldn't really say that's lucky, more so that was the RNG that I guaranteed myself with the start of the run. That was kind of the point. So we kind of like broke even. This is like average luck. But the reality of Dream Surges, as I kind of said earlier, is you can get really unlucky. And while I may not have gotten really unlucky, I did get unlucky in other areas, namely, you know, the person trying to gank me, which it may have seemed minor, but the fact that it completely threw off my route actually did kind of fuck me a little bit. That was like, oh nice, we got a bonus chest. Chests aren't super major, but they're just nice, right? It's like, hey, free XP. Can't hurt. Um, that was like about a 5-minute time loss in total when you account for the fact that I had to adapt my route in the middle and then, you know, travel back to get to where I had been going for everything. It just ended up losing me more time than, you know, it really should have. I can't do that in combat. I wish I knew that. Did not mean to cross survival instincts there, but whatever. So at this point, unless I somehow really fuck up, which I don't want to jinx it, but I think sub 2 is doable. I would be very surprised if I was that far off. But, I mean, it's not completely free. It is going to be very close. It's just unfortunate that it was this close at all. Because it should not have been. It really shouldn't have been. This should have been much, much, much easier, and nowhere near as down to the wire as it has come, just because I kind of got fucked. These quests are not giving me great XP. But I'm hyper fixating on my experience gain more so than I normally would, just because obviously that's how it goes when you're really nervous about something like this. You tend to, you know, second guess yourself, like, am I actually getting as much as I thought I would, that kind of thing. But I have options. There's plenty of things that I can get. Come on. Should be Dragon Ride. Can't wait until we can Dragon Ride in Druid flight form. It's going to make this feel super nice. The ability to fly in Dragonflight is definitely nice for Druids. I feel like I've gotten more use out of it than I actually expected. Shouldn't have dismounted there. Force a habit. Because there are still plenty of cases where you can use flight form to good effect. But it's still notably faster to Dragon Ride. I'm gonna focus up a little bit. I'm starting to become increasingly worried. I got this, I got this, I got this. Come on. There we go. as big a mob pull as I can get for mob kill XP while I'm doing this. I don't know how many it's going to take, so I'm just going to do as many as possible, because that's the nice thing about Guardian Druids. It doesn't matter how many mobs you're fighting, you just murder the heck out of all of them. Yeah, that's unlucky. Fucking owl. Die already. Okay. This is fine. On any second now, any second now, any second now. This RP takes so much longer. Every single time I do this, I forget how long this takes, and I second guess whether this is efficient. I think it is. I should have re-gotten onto my dragon riding mount. What happened there? What is happening with my flap upwards? It's just like like the cast. It's hard to really tell that stuff just by watching, but the cast is like ever so slightly delayed. So then when I flick my camera, I think it's like ever so slight lag that it's just completely eating my cast. But it completely screws me. Okay. This is one of those. I'm just going to do a gigantic pull. And there's a lot of these mobs that I can just get the red on. This quest is actually only efficient with Druid Flight Form, I think. I distinctly remember thinking to myself a while ago, I wonder if I maybe go find a run. If I know there's a few people who like religiously watch all of my runs. If you can find me mentioning in a run that I did with a Druid like months ago that I wish I had Druid Flight Form for this quest, I distinctly remember feeling, at least at one point, that, damn, if I had Druid Flight Form for this, it would be so fast, because I could just run around and scoop up all of these little discarded journals. I'm fairly sure I said that at some point, because, I mean, it's true. It makes it so much easier. But I don't know if I ever actually voiced that out loud, or just thought it to myself, but I think there's a good chance I made a passing comment about it. And while I haven't been able to benefit from it just yet, I should be able to for the last two, which will save a decent amount of time. I think I'm out of combat, right? Okay, Druid Flight Form, and now I just need the 2 tablets. So this thing. There we go. Yeah, so remember when I put Guardian Druid in S tier and basically said it's getting like its own tier along with Windwalker because it can do things that other classes can't? That's what I mean. That is like a 1 to 2 minute time save that you can only do on Druids. Now, technically speaking, you could do it on other Druid specs, but you know what I mean, right? Like, Guardian is obviously the fastest Druid spec, so it's a Druid time save, and specifically for the spec that is really good, right? Only Druids can do that. And there are many quests like that across this game, where you could just completely cheese it by having Flight Form, and there is literally nothing else in this game, no other ability that lets you do that shit. Of just, I'm going to fly through a densely packed room full of mobs, click on the 2 specific items I need, and then just fuck off out of there without actually having to fight anything. And that is just so efficient in so many areas. It's nice how, like, I've been doing runs with Guardian Druid for a while now. For Dragonflight. And that has never come into play until now, because, you know, I can actually fly. But there you go, it's just yet another Guardian Druid W. Typical. Alright, we're gonna get this rare mob. And then Theron's Watch. I think I'm gonna get a good amount of experience from the first two quests. I actually have an idea on what might be faster than the second set of quests at Theron's Watch. That could save me a good amount of time. It is nice that rare mobs are actually efficient in Dragonflight. Because they're efficient in, like, obviously older questing routes. And they're a little bit harder to kill, obviously, in Dragonflight relative to the low-level ones that die in just a few hits. But considering each one of these is actually giving, like, a wanted quest's worth of experience, give or take, they become efficient to actually spend time doing. Like, yeah, that's pretty good XP. I should be using Dragon Writing here. This is yet another Druid Supremacy moment. God, they can just demolish this quest with Flight Form. I never even consider this one. That's usually a super annoying quest. Okay, yeah. I got this. I got this. Oh! You have no idea the massive wave of relief that I am feeling right now. I mean, like, you know, I've been telling myself that I've got this for, like, a little bit now, but you never know for sure. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, that Fury Warrior run that I did, like, a few months ago, I thought I had sub 2. I think I was, what, like, a minute or two over sub 2? It was really close. I was actually kind of disappointed by that one. The only reason I wasn't completely disappointed by that Fury Warrior run is that was actually never meant to even be my fastest run. The fact that it ended up being my fastest 60 to 70 run just kind of by chance, it was just like a nice, happy little accident, right? I did that run purely for testing purposes. I'm like, I'm going to test to see how fast I can get Dreamsurges. And it was literally my first actual, like, kind of one of these runs where I, you know, put everything together and try to go, like, decently fast type deals. And I actually put it up to a poll on my channel as to what class I was going to use, because it wasn't meant to be a real attempt. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just let people vote for what they want to see. And shit. Okay, this is where, like I said, these last few quests, I do not like these, Sam I am, so I'm going to just do something else really quick nearby to get this last bit of experience. But yeah, that Fury Warrior run, I at no point ever intended for that to be my fastest run. It just so happened, I mean, honestly, part of it was Fury Warrior just ended up being better than I expected. Like, I knew Fury was good, but I think I talked about this on the tier list a good amount. And I've received some debate on Fury Warrior, but the thing about it is actually not the best spec for lower levels. And one of the reasons I rated it on my tier list as highly as I did is the scaling goes fucking crazy at high levels, as you can see in that run. I did not expect it to be shredding packs as quickly as it was, and I certainly didn't expect its survivability to be that good. Now, that being said, it doesn't hold a candle to Guardian Druid, at least as far as survivability goes, so Guardian can do consistently bigger pulls and survive them without dying, because I actually did die a handful of times in that Fury Warrior run, and that is a pretty decent time loss. You have to, like, rebuff and shit like that. It's not great. So that was not ideal. But but it was significantly faster than I expected it would be. Okay. Spheres are giving me less experience than I thought they would. I'm gonna be honest. But Akrasoth is in a good spot. That's actually really lucky. Akrasoth's patrol can be really bad sometimes, but he is reachable here. I genuinely think this was faster than continuing along those quests. Those last few quests are not only really not efficient, they are deadly too, and sometimes you just get one shot by a poorly scaled ability for whatever reason. So I actually think this was the right call. This doesn't get me there. I'm literally like 1 or 2 quests off. At this point, I just go to Thaldraszus and start the Thaldraszus campaign. I believe that should be enough. Message most dire. Oh my god. See, I don't know how long this is all going to take. Oh man, I hope this was not a bad idea. I need to find some rare mobs. I know for a fact there's Henlair, and one more rare mob should get me there. This is... Oh man. Henlair, please. Worst case at this point, if I don't get it from this, I literally just kill mobs. Oh my god. Come on. There's no fucking way. There's no way this is not enough. Yes! Oh! Okay, that ended up being way closer than I thought it was gonna be. I'm gonna be real. Oh my god. Yeah, like I said, I never even expected that Fury Warrior run to come close. And it was only 2 minutes over. And then I'm like, oh, surely I can beat this easily. But that's the problem with these Dreamsurge fucking things. It's just so random. Like, I know it's gonna look in hindsight like this rare mob thing was a poor choice. I think, honestly, the only mistake I made was going to Thaldraszus. I should have known that the turn-in at Alexstrasza would not have given me enough experience. I should have, I wish I had thought immediately. Because if I had gone to Henlair from here, right after Akrasoth, that's actually a really short hop. I could even have gone over the mountain, just bloop, right over there. And I think that would have been better. I mean, it doesn't matter, we got there in the end, but... Oh my god. Game's really not doing anything to help my stress here. That was one hell of a finish. That is actually genuinely the most stressful finish I think I've had in... Maybe I need to watch my wording. That could be misinterpreted. It's one of the most stressful endings of a speedrun I've had. I guess the Coltiran one was technically a little bit down to the wire, because I think, if I recall, while my time was still good regardless, I ended up being 1 minute under 2 hours for, I think, what was it? I can't remember if I actually got, I think I may have barely also made it under 2 hours for for 60 to 70. I don't remember my exact time, though. But maybe I went a little bit over. I forget. I'll have to double check. But I remember being happy with one of the milestones that I hit on that run. Obviously, that run in general is very fast, but like one of the individual like segments, I was like, oh, that was pretty good. The thing is this, and this is kind of the problem with one of these types of things, where obviously this run can be faster. Like, that's a no-brainer. This can be improved. It's just a question of, am I going to spend the time to improve it? And I just, like I said before, I don't know if I can really justify the time spent. There's so many things that I would rather do. And, like, that's the thing. I was more than happy to min-max my time for, like, 10 to 60, because 10 to 60 is pretty deterministic. And, like, I can just make routing changes and just keep doing runs and just with practice and stuff get a better time. All things considered, I don't really think I made any major mistakes during this run. Like, I think I played pretty well. I didn't die. I didn't, like, forget anything important. I got my buffs done. I didn't, like, forget to reapply Darkmoon Faire buff. Obviously, Darkmoon Faire ended. You know, what are you gonna do? I got all my buffs up. I maybe was, like, a tiny bit inefficient with refreshing some of my buffs, but my pathing was good. I think my responsiveness and, like, ability to adapt my route on the fly was pretty good, all things considered. Yeah. To be honest, I think I played pretty well. That's the problem. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. Not only do I have a very small window, because in order to get like a run like this, I have a 5-day window every month. And after, I think March, after March, Azure Span Dreamsurge will never again align with Darkmoon Faire. So there are technically 2 more weeks ever that I could attempt a run like this. And if I kept attempting runs and kept getting the perfect RNG, it's theoretically possible. Like, it could happen. Will it? I don't know. I think the only thing that will convince me to do another one of these speedruns is there's patch 10.2.6 coming out. And on the roadmap, it's just a skull and crossbones, right? Blizzard hasn't really been clear about what exactly that means. So, I don't know what that patch is going to entail, or when it's going to come out. And while this patch introduces some okay quality of life features, it's pretty bare bones. The, obviously, follower dungeons, I kind of touched upon that a little bit earlier. I might expand upon that in a little bit more detail, whenever I'm filling in that segment, because obviously, right now I have it recorded, that little segment in the middle where I stop talking, so maybe I'll talk about that then. Maybe, if you're watching this video, you heard me talk about that then, but for me, it's in the future, fun time shenanigans. But it's something that I probably plan on making at least, I think a 2-minute video covering. I think that's probably enough to just be like, hey, just so you know, this is a cool feature. And like, the thing about those follower dungeons is I don't want to be overly negative, because while it does irk me a little bit, I'll admit, and I was pretty open about that when discussing it, especially in my Discord, it does kind of irk me that it's been blatantly ignored, the leveling component, because I do think, just from a business perspective, it's just a really blatant oversight on Blizzard's end. You can argue whether or not it should be meant for leveling, and I don't necessarily think that should be its main point. I'm glad that new players have a way to do the dungeons and learn the dungeons with NPCs, but the thing is, like Final Fantasy, you can do the dungeons with NPCs and still use them for leveling. In fact, a lot of people, there's actually a lot of customization in the Final Fantasy Trust system, where you can, customize your party and, gear up your characters and level them up and stuff like that, and tailor your party to then have these NPCs that you can spam dungeons with, and it doesn't fucking matter. It's not negative to the game. If anything, it's just this cool little minigame that not a ton of people interact with, but the people who like it, like it. It's just a nice alternative way for leveling. So I don't really see what the downside to that is, and I'm not expecting WoW to be nearly as in-depth, but giving people the option of doing that for leveling just seems like a no-brainer. And Well, I understand what a lot of people are saying, that it is most likely more of a tech demo than anything, and they're just doing this to prepare for delves and to give people like a learning opportunity. The thing that baffles me is the hard part is the technology. It's getting the AI working. It's saying, okay, let's get some functioning followers. They've done the hard part. It's impressive that they've managed to do that at all. All they need to do is just give it some experience. Just buff the numbers. Like, fuck, motherfucker. Whatever, I don't need to care anymore. Like, congratulations, buddy. That's unfortunate. I reacted a little bit too slow. It's like, alright, congratulations, you ganked a... I guess I'm, at this point, level 70, so he probably doesn't think he's ganking a leveling character, but whatever. At least that happened after the run's done. But yeah, I think my main complaint about this, and I'll probably try to find a polite, nice way to word this, is like, Blizzard's literally shooting themselves in the foot by not making it available for leveling. If they just buff the experience, it doesn't need to be good. Like, I'm at no point advocating for follower dungeons to be a viable, like, really strong leveling method. It should just give some experience. Because right now, I was not joking about it giving half of a bar. It gives nothing. Absolutely nothing. It seems more like a mistake that it gives some experience right now, because it just doesn't do anything. Killing mobs out of the open world gives more. So, if they just give it experience, it'll accomplish all of the same goals. You'll still be able to use it as a new player to learn dungeons. You'll still be able to use it to practice your rotation, to, you know, get AI teammates so you don't need to deal with humans if you have big anxiety. I get that, right? It'll still work for all of the same things, except now, people who enjoy those aspects of it can not only use it for the generic, kind of pointless testing my rotation thing, which, let's be real, you can do on a target dummy anyway, or, I mean, if you're just trying to test your rotation and it's not an anxiety thing, you could just do it in a normal dungeon with humans. You should probably not even be doing it in a normal dungeon because there's no mechanics and things die too fast anyway, so it's not a good place to realistically learn your class anyways, despite what some, you know, people may be saying who just blatantly shill for Blizzard. So realistically, that's not an actual advantage. It could be argued it's a nice, helpful tool, but not helpful enough to sit there and just spam the dungeons ad nauseum when you're getting absolutely zero rewards out of it. But if you could do this while also getting some experience to level up one of your alts, then yeah, sure, you know, 2 birds, 1 stone. But as it stands, there's just simply no practical use case for the follower dungeons at all. There just isn't. So why do they exist? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I mean, I know why they exist, obviously. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but I think I'm more just saying it serves no real practical use to the players, and it would be so simple for Blizzard to fix it. So, like I said, I'll probably make like a 2-minute video in a few days covering that, basically just politely saying, hey, you know, here are some of the pros of this system. I can see the upsides, but it doesn't give any experience, and this seems like a missed opportunity, is kind of how I'll probably try to word it to be polite. And I'll even, you know what, I just, just to demonstrate the system, I already plan on resubbing to Final Fantasy for a month. I have nothing against Final Fantasy, it's just I'm busy right now, I'm not actively playing for it, so I don't have an active subscription, but I will renew my subscription for a single month just to get like 1 minute of footage, if that, of the trust system, and just include that in the background of the video, just to be like, hey, look, you know, this is what it could be. I'm not expecting this. This is super cool. I love this feature. It doesn't have to be this in-depth, but we all know that this is what it's meant to be. Why can't it at least give some experience, is, I think, the point that I'm going to try to make. And I'm going to be real, I think that's pretty fair. I don't really think I'm being unreasonable with that. It just seems kind of like a missed opportunity on Blizzard's end. The other thing that confuses me, and I know the speedrun's already over, I'm not going to sit here and rant for forever. I feel bad. It's like, there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about during this run, but this ended up being a significantly less chill, laid-back speedrun than I had hoped for. What can you do, man? What can you do? Gotta work with what I got. A lot of my recent plans have just not gone the way I wanted them to, which just gotta roll with the punches. So I kind of want to just at least talk about this, because I don't really have any other speedruns or streams planned for really soon, so this is something at least I want to talk about. I feel like, whatever, you know. Obviously, if you enjoyed watching the speedrun and that's all you're here for, thank you for watching. If you like listening to me talk about random topics, then, you know, we'll probably be here for another 15 minutes because I feel like talking about this, and you know what? This is the best opportunity. Throw it into an existing 2-hour-long video. But yeah, I think that is pretty fair of a way to advocate for those changes. And who knows? Maybe Blizzard will change something. But oh yeah, the thing that I was about to say. Blizzard, this giant water bottle, by the way, I have like a new, completely unrelated. I know I'm all over the place, but for Christmas, actually, one of the things that my dad gave me is a like literally gigantic like water 40-ounce thermos. So specifically, he said for speedruns like this, where I just have effectively an endless supply of water that will take me like half a day to go through. So unless I end up doing speedruns that are like 20 hours long, I don't really need to take water breaks anymore. And it's like ice cold because it's, you know, one of those like metal, you know, traps the hot and cold or whatever. You know what I mean? But yeah, this thing's heavy as fuck, like lifting it up and setting it down. Like, I don't know if it picks up on the mic, but you can hear every time I put it down, it like, you know, makes a big thump. Anyways, I don't know. Just felt like talking about that. But yeah, Blizzard has announced that there's going to be a 10 dungeon daily limit for the follower dungeons at the launch. And that just seems like a bizarre decision, right? Because if they don't give any experience, why limit them? You know, how are they going to be exploited? It almost seems like Blizzard kind of forgot that they nuked the experience values in the dungeons in the first place and is just doing this as like a failsafe measure in case people find a workaround, but there is no workaround. They are dead on arrival for leveling, so I just fail to see any other reason for that limit being in place. And I think my initial impression when I saw that Blizzard made the blue post about the 10 dungeon limit, and the thing that I heard from a bunch of my friends is like, they're worried people are going to farm experience with it. This is their fail-safe thing. That was everybody's first assumption, at least that I know, said, this is clearly what Blizzard is doing. So every single person that I know is assuming that it is going to at least be an option for leveling, and Blizzard is worried that it's going to be too good, and that's why they put those restrictions in place, which is just the most confusing thing to me. It's like this cognitive dissonance where I'm like, am I just misunderstanding something here? Like, what? Are these numbers like just PTR? Which, I mean, is possible, but having tested a lot of PTR for a very long time, I'm going to be real, what you see is what you get. Just like how multiple features in patch 10.1.5, such as Chromie time extending to 61, and the Dragonflight dungeon quests being available within the instance, were in the patch notes, never worked in the PTR, and I complained about it multiple times, and I was told by multiple people, stop complaining, it's just the PTR, as always. And not only did it not make it to live servers, it is still not working to this day. In 10.2.5, Chromie time still does not scale up to level 61, and you can still not pick up Dragonflight quests within the dungeon. The second one is technically working, and has always been technically working on a major technicality in that it is clearly not working as intended. They did half of the work and then forgot to check to make sure that they got everything working properly. But I've talked about why it's broken and the technicalities and stuff in a lot of other videos, so I'm not going to repeat myself there. But point being, it's still not fixed. And I made multiple forum posts about it. I talked about it in a bunch of different videos, and yeah, Blizzard has done nothing. So, like, what am I going to do? Unless I literally message the one Blizzard employee that I know and say, like, hey, I know this is not your department at all, but, you know, can you maybe take a look at this? And I don't want to bother her. That I would just feel like a fucking asshole, so I'm just gonna hope that they eventually figure it out. Who knows? So that's where we are. One other thing, one final topic where this is completely unrelated, but it's just something that I really feel I need to say. Completely unrelated to World of Warcraft speedrunning or general. It was gonna be one of those like fun little side topics, and because I'm not going to be like, I'll probably find a way to stream. I'll probably stream classic stuff at the end of the month or something, because I do want to get back into streaming again. It's just one of those things where I kind of needed a break from it to do a bunch of shit. Like, obviously, I've been kind of busy lately. But because I won't be streaming at least for, like, the next few weeks, and it's just something I really want to get out there. So I've said many times, fucking survival, if it's... A lot of times, the way that I look at, like, games, some games, like, I pick them up, and they, like, grab me right away, and I'm, like, really hooked. And I'm, like, a lot of times when I start playing that game, I'm like, wow, this is, like, one of the best games I've ever played. But it's like, you know, certain games use kind of, like, you know, predatory tactics and stuff to, like, lure you in. And eventually you realize that it's, like, all flash and no substance kind of thing. So there are a lot of times where I talk about a game a lot in, like, some of my videos. And I'm like, oh, this game is really good. You should play it. And then, like, after I spend, like, another 100 hours or so playing it, I'm like, actually, this game kind of sucks. Like, I talked earlier about Total War games. Love Total War games to death. It's probably the franchise I played the most outside of World of Warcraft. Fucking love Total War, but that's unrelated to the point. But, I've talked about a few mobile games in the past. Like, I mentioned my first impressions of Warcraft Rumble way back in the beta was that I actually kind of had fun with it, and then they made it extremely pay-to-win and garbage, and... then I had to much later on say, hey, remember when I said Warcraft Rumble was kind of okay? Well, now with the actual release of it, it sucks. And I still keep meaning to go back and look at Warcraft Rumble again to make, like, a video dissecting why it is so garbage and predatory. That's one of those things where I'd love to make that video, I just don't have time. And, like, there's other games like that I've talked about, especially mobile games. I talked about Legends of Runeterra a few times, and how I think it's a really fun mobile game, and I really enjoyed playing it. And then they also did the same thing and went extremely pay to win, extremely garbage, and I hated it. And another game that I started playing about half a year ago, and I talked about on stream a few times, is Honkai Star Rail. And I talked about it when I first started playing it and how I was really enjoying it. I was, like, playing it all the time. And I really, really liked a lot of the systems in that game. And then, you know, I finished, like, the main game, and there's, like, a bunch of endgame content, and I played that for a while, but I kind of, like, put it down for a little while in, like, December, right around when Season of Discovery came out. And I always feel that, like, the best way to know whether a game is, like, really good is to put it down for a while, make sure that you don't have any, like, FOMO or whatever garbage, like, that is just keeping you playing. And if you can set a game down for, like, months or, you know, years or something, and come back to it later and still really enjoy it, that's a sign that it's a good game. And the inverse is true, right? If you come back to it and you're like, actually, this is just not really fun, and I was just playing it because, you know, it's just one of those games that just keeps you on the treadmill and stuff like that. And I've had experiences on both sides of that. And, like, after about, like, a month and a half of not playing Honkai Star Rail, and then finally reinstalling it because I had a bit more free time in January this month, right? And, like, trying out some of the new content that they had added in, like, the time that I had gone, I've got to say, banger game. Fucking love it. It's actually just really good. And, like, now I can say with absolute certainty that it's not, like, you know, the typical gacha treadmill bullshit. And, like, look, full disclosure, it has gacha mechanics. It has, like, some of those, hey, do daily things. But at this point, I can safely say it is not the appeal of the game. And they've actually gone way back from the start and tried to make it even easier and more player-friendly and stuff in terms of that stuff. The main thing I love about it, oh my god, the roguelike mode in that game is just so fucking good. And I would just feel bad if I did not tell people, you gotta fucking play it, because holy shit, it's so fun. It is actually one of the best roguelikes I've ever played. It's just a side game mode in a mobile game. It's this thing called Simulated Universe, and you unlock it pretty early in, and it just keeps expanding, and they just, every single patch, add new content to this thing, where I'm like, I did not realize I needed this, but this makes it even better than it already was. And I have been just endlessly replaying this, and it's completely free. It's like not one of those game modes where you have to pay to play. No, completely free, infinitely replayable, like you have infinite attempts at it, there's no pay to win, no bullshit. It's just a fun game mode. And, like, you get free shit for playing it. It's, I don't know, like, I hate doing this because it's the same company that makes Genshin Impact, which I tried once and I was not a huge fan of, and they are very greedy in some of their other games. And who fucking knows? At some point, the other shoe's gonna drop and suddenly Honkai Star Rail turns into like, a money infested, like, hellscape. It could happen. I'm not going to deny that. But right now, I've got to say, this is like genuinely the most fun I have ever had with a mobile game. It is so fucking good. You gotta play it. And I'm mostly saying that because I've talked about this a bunch of times in past streams, like over the past 6 months. And I fucking love this game. And I just wanted to say that. Anyways, that is the note that I'm going to leave off on. I just really wanted to talk about that. But yeah, so future plans for at least the next week. I, once again, hope you enjoyed watching this run, even though it was a little bit of a shit show. It's just how it goes sometimes. And as I said, I'm planning on making at least some video covering follower dungeons. Probably I'm going to upload that either Monday or Tuesday. I'm not sure when. The reality of the new content coming on Tuesday is, like I said, it's pretty bare bones. There's just nothing really for me to cover. I usually make guides on new content, but there is just genuinely nothing here. If you're worried about, like, is there going to be a new catch-up mechanic, blah, 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 there's nothing. There's literally nothing worth covering. There's some cool new cosmetic stuff, actually. A lot of the new cosmetics I quite like. There's, like, a new really sick two-handed torch that you can get, and there's a grappling hook, one-handed mace from the new thing. So the cosmetic rewards are actually kind of sick, but not actually relevant for any sort of guide that I would want to make on, like, how to gear up. I will probably make an official, like, definitive how to get caught up in Dragonflight update. I do one of those every patch, usually like towards the middle. And since it's clear that they're not really adding anything, I think I can very safely make a pretty good updated version of that on how to get caught up in the Emerald Dream and stuff. But more importantly, sometime towards the end of this week, now that I finally finished this run, finally gotten my achieved goal of 2 hours, and at least done it consistently in the 2-hour range, I can finally make the full 10 to 60, 60 to 70 video guide, and then update the written guide to accompany that. I don't know exactly what day that'll be. It's my main goal for this coming week, so I'll be working on it. If it's done by Friday, it's done by Friday. If it's done by Sunday, it's done by Sunday. We'll see how long it takes me within here. And the catch-up guide is, once again, like kind of the secondary priority. So if I end up finishing the leveling guide early, then the catch-up guide comes out, I don't know, on the 23rd or something around here. We'll see how that goes. And then I have a few other miscellaneous videos that'll come out like around here, but I think there's a lot of cool ideas I have planned for them. One of them will, assuming I manage to get it set up, be the classic speedrun. I don't know exactly how long it'll take me to get that set up, but I'm hoping to have it done by, like, this period, like this week, the final week of January. So the idea will be that I upload it sometime around here, like one of the last 2 weeks or so of Phase 1 of Season of Discovery, and then it's like a fun little thing, right before P2. And then what I might do is in P2, when they update the experience values, I'll probably level a few new characters and, like, test to see what the fastest leveling method is now that we have new revamped XP values, because, of course, that's a change from Classic. But anyways, with all that said, I think I've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about, so I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.